Hey, what's going on, Guardians? TBL here, coming at you with what's starting to seem like a bit of a weekly salty commentary on something having to do with Bungie and their practices with Destiny 2 moving forward. This time around, we're going to be talking about the notion of locked content that is going to be locked behind the purchase of expansion content or DLC, stuff like that. While this is certainly nothing new to the world of Destiny, it has popped up in public conversation over the past week, basically since Curse of Osiris came live, with the notion of certain items and activities being locked behind the purchase of that DLC, specifically items and activities that were previously available in the base vanilla game. I'm going to try to keep this quick and just go through what some of the biggest issues here are, what I think about them, and hopefully what can be done about them. Now, a lot of this is centered around the exotic raid shotgun, the Legend of Acrius. For those who don't know, in the vanilla game, base Destiny 2, after you've completed the story, gotten to level 20, you have a chance at getting a specific drop from Cabal enemies. You go through this little quest line. Once you've completed a couple of steps, you're tasked with completing the Leviathan raid, which is all well and good. And the completion of all these steps eventually rewards you with the Legend of Acrius exotic shotgun. It's a very fun weapon, very powerful weapon, and it's basically been available in the base game before now. Now, why do I say before now? Well, it's rather simple. After you've completed the Leviathan raid step of the Legend of Acrius quest, you're tasked with going and completing a specific strike. That specific strike is a Prestige Nightfall version of the arms dealer. Previously, this strike was power level 300, and once you completed that, you got the base version of the Legend of Acrius. You had to complete a couple of other steps, and it would ultimately unlock the full version of the gun. Well, there's a bit of a problem here. If you've been playing Destiny 2, but maybe you haven't purchased the Curse of Osiris, and you haven't completed that particular step of the Legend of Acrius, you haven't completed the arms dealer strike, if you head to the director right now and try it, you're going to be met with a little bit of a surprise. That strike, which was previously available, is now a little bit off limits for you. Now, in the director, it's still going to say that it's a power level 300 recommended strike, but when you load it up and go in, the enemies are at power level 330. Now, this is, of course, because this particular version of the strike is programmed like a Prestige Nightfall, which the requirements of were bumped up to 330 when Curse of Osiris went live. This creates a bit of a problem. This content, this quest that leads to this shotgun that was in the base game, in the vanilla game that you already bought, is now locked behind something that requires a level of power that you can't reach until you buy Curse of Osiris. Remember, you can't reach 330 unless you buy the DLC. If you only own base Destiny 2, the pinnacle, the highest light you can reach is 305 with mods on all of your weapons and armor. And that creates a problem here, because this content, that directly impedes your ability to complete that strike. I mean, maybe if you're super insane, you can make your way through that strike as a light level 300 person going through that 330 content. But as it stands right now, you can't complete this strike. You can't get this weapon if you didn't get it before Curse of Osiris came out until you buy Curse of Osiris. And that's a problem, because that's basically a bit of content that was already purchased, already in the vanilla game, that's now locked behind a purchase of this DLC. Which, of course, is not good. You can't take content, something that was available in vanilla that people already paid for, and then lock it behind some DLC. And this isn't really the only problem with this, too. Of course, a later step in the Legend of Acrius questline has you completing the Prestige version of the raid to get the ornament. You can't do that either unless you own Curse of Osiris now, because of course the Prestige version of the raid activity was bumped from 300 power level to 330. So that's another bit of content that was in the base game that's no longer accessible to people who haven't bought Curse of Osiris. And that's I got a bit of a problem with that, because A, you're locking content that was available in the vanilla game, the base game, content people already paid for, behind another paywall of DLC. B, you're locking a questline that was previously available behind that payment for DLC. And of course, that causes all kinds of other issues. It means you have this useless quest item that you can't get out of your heavy inventory slot. You've got the uncompleted Legend of Acrius in your pockets. You have this ornament that you'll never be able to get your hands on. And that might not seem big, but I don't know. You can't really just take content like that and put it behind a paywall. Now, in the specific case of the strike, of the arms dealer strike, personally, I do believe this is a mistake. I do believe that because you can look at it at the director and it says its power level, its recommended power level is 300, I think that Bungie might have done a bit of an oversight here. I think they just have it kind of coded the same way a Prestige Nightfall is. And since that strike was linked with the same sort of environment and modifiers as a Prestige Nightfall, when they bumped up the requirements for the Prestige Nightfall, it inadvertently bumped up the requirements for that strike. I'm willing to give them a pass on that and say that's probably a mistake, and hopefully we'll be seeing them update that within the next week or so. They did make mention of it in their Bungie weekly blog. But that's not really the only problem here. Again, we've already talked about the rest of the Legend of Acrius quest, which is now locked behind a purchase of Curse of Osiris. For me, I didn't get the Prestige Raid version. I didn't get the ornament from that because I didn't do the Prestige Raid. Now I have to be power level 330 before I can even attempt to do that again. And again, this isn't a new thing. This same sort of issue has happened before. Basically, anytime Destiny releases new content, like the Nightfall will now be locked behind whatever new strike requirements are in the next DLC. We saw this happen with like the Taken King, where trials and other in-game activities were bumped up to the new light requirements and were basically locked behind a purchase of that DLC. So it's certainly nothing new here, but this is really the first time where an actual item in the game has kind of been taken away from players who don't buy the DLC and put behind that paywall, and that's not okay. And it's certainly not limited to that, because of course there are now achievements for Xbox and trophies for PlayStation, which were previously available in the game that you can't get unless you have Curse of Osiris now. If you didn't get that Prestige Nightfall or Prestige Raid achievement or trophy for your platform, well, if you didn't get it before Curse of Osiris came out, sorry, you kind of have to buy Curse of Osiris to get that achievement/trophy that was available in the base game. And that creates other problems, which we've been seeing a lot of reports of over on the Destiny the Game subreddit and the Bungie forums. People basically asking for a refund of the game since something from the vanilla game, something they had already paid for, has now changed. It's been taken away from them. There have been a lot of posts of people posting their conversation with service reps over at Xbox or at Sony, basically telling them that they'd like a refund, and in many cases being granted a refund because yes, indeed, content that was in the base game is now, the content that you've already paid for, is now no longer available for you. And even though it's something as small as an achievement or a trophy, that's still content that you've paid for once and you no longer have access to if you didn't pick it up before until you buy the DLC. And I'm not okay with that. And it seems like a lot of these other companies, Microsoft and Sony, certainly aren't okay with it either. Sony in particular is rather protective of their trophy system. I remember stories from years ago where they have very strict policies when it comes to trophies, like vanilla trophies. Trophies that are in your base game have to be available in your base game. You can't just like release a DLC and then not grant access to those vanilla trophies anymore. And indeed, that's exactly what's happened for a lot of players out there who can't get platinum in their trophies for Destiny 2 now until they buy the Curse of Osiris. And you know, all of this is just basically rounded up into another black eye for Bungie, at least in the PR department. They made a very vague response to this in the Bungie weekly blog this week, basically stating this: "We are aware that there are some Destiny 2 trophies and achievements that have become unavailable to players who have not purchased Curse of Osiris. We are committed to fixing this issue and are currently investigating a solution. Please stay tuned for more updates on this topic as progress is made." Investigating a solution. Well, the solution would be to not lock vanilla content behind the new light level or power level requirements of a new activity. That's kind of the core issue here. And I understand, you know, they just wanted to bump up the prestige mode to the new power levels, but you kind of have to deal with the fallout of that. And maybe they just really didn't think about the repercussions of that. They have trophies that are tied to that. That they have quests that are tied to that. And certainly the solution, or at least one solution to this, could be to drop the prestige requirements for some of these items, or maybe they should have just made a different difficulty mode for the Curse of Osiris on top of prestige. Maybe have a, I don't know, heroic, legendary, some other kind of difficulty mode. Because, again, this is nothing new. Stuff like the Nightfall and Trials and these in-game modes have always basically been locked by the next iterative DLC release. It's always been the case. I've never really agreed with it, but it's been a thing. But this is really the first time that it's directly, tangibly affected items and weapons and ornaments and stuff that were previously available to players that is no longer available to you if you didn't get it before Curse of Osiris came out. And I just gotta say, the timing on this could not have been any worse. Bungie's already dealing with a couple of black eyes from some of their previous poorly handled PR situations, and this is not what they needed right on the heels of their brand new content release, which is already lackluster in and of itself. But anyways, there you guys go. That's about as quick a wrap-up as I could think to do for this. Are any of you guys out there, people who haven't purchased Curse of Osiris? Have you noticed that you're locked out of content? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say down in the comment section below. But that's going to be it for this one, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully Bungie can come up with a solution to this fairly quickly, because I'd say a lot is riding on what little good public faith they've got left. But I'm out for now. As always, I'm TheBlackLink. You Guardians, stay frosty.